So this is our first webinar of 2025, and I want you to, one of the things we're going to start doing is a Kahoot each time. So this is a way that, I don't know if you've done a Kahoots before, but it's a way to kind of play a game and get some information at the same time. So if you can hit the QR code and open it up and type in your name, and we can, once everybody's kind of in, we can kind of answer our first couple questions, and then maybe before Angela starts her talk, maybe we could I'll just put in the chat about where we live or where we're coming in from or whatever, those kind of things. So Austin, are you able to join? Working on it?
Working on it.
Okay. I have greatly enjoyed doing Kahoots because it allows us to kind of just have some fun stuff in our workshop. There we go. So we'll start. So we just have a few questions here to start, just to kind of get us thinking about LinkedIn. So here, the questions are based on not only on getting the right answer, but also how fast you do it. So LinkedIn is a social network, true or false? We got it right. Next question. Oh, there's always a scoreboard afterwards. So this goes based on how fast you got the answer, since we all got it right. So Sterling was quick on the draw. So our next question. How often do you use LinkedIn? Never, rarely, seldom, or often? That's a good split there. So this one, we can select as many answers as you want. What do you primarily use LinkedIn for? So this is interesting what people use it all for. So that's just some good information for us. So now we are going to hear from Dr. Angela.
Okay, can I take over the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we are talking today about really personal branding through LinkedIn. We're not going to get into like how many times a week do you post and all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into what actually makes your personal brand effective. So what I find is that, a lot of people build businesses that they don't love. And my big mission in the world is to help people to do the work that you love, do it with clients that you love, earn far more, work far less, and unleash massive impact in the world. And if you're someone like me who likes to travel, you can also do it from anywhere in the world. The last 4 years, I have lived literally around the world. I lived in 6 countries the past year alone. So it is possible to create the kind of lifestyle that you want, the kind of life that you want, the business that you want, and also be able to scale it to whatever level that you want. It's just a matter of making certain choices. So what I preach, and you'll see this a few times throughout the session, is the measure of a good business, the measure of success should be that it is simple to build, it is effective, and it also creates predictable outcomes. And now more than ever, it should be also able to allow you to evolve quickly. Because the truth is, we are heading into an age where things are changing very, very quickly with AI coming in. And as coaches and consultants, you either get on board or you're going to get swallowed by the tidal wave. And there's a lot of people who are quite naive about how AI is going to affect them. And your personal brand is one thing that you can use to pull out into the forefront of your competitors by showcasing who you actually are, not just a facade of, this amazing corporate entity where it's out there, actually showcasing who you are, what your values are, how you think, and really niching into what makes you you. So when it comes to this, a lot of times what is going to allow you to stand out from the crowd is really niching into your genius. And I know sometimes the word genius can be a little bit triggering because you're like, oh, I'm not really a genius at anything. Everyone is a genius at something. If you are impact driven, so you are building a business not just to like bring in all the money for yourself, but you're also trying to create a ripple effect in the world, personal branding works really well for that. And if you are willing to be a little bit unconventional, doesn't mean you have to be completely wildly out there, but doing things different than what everyone else is doing, that's how you're actually going to be able to pull ahead. And I know the idea of being unconventional on LinkedIn can be a little bit scary because it is a reputation-based platform. However, if you blend in with everyone else, you're never going to get traction. So you have to be willing to stick your head a little bit above water so that you get seen by the right kind of people. And again, it's not being anything other than what you are. And the truth is, a lot of people are like, oh, just be yourself when you're creating content. But this little black hole that we create content through often makes people not be themselves, even in the least. So it is a skill to be able to be authentic. It is a skill to build your personal brand. It is a skill to build a business that you actually love. So we're going to dig a little bit into that. Now, what I find is that highly accomplished professionals have the most difficulty building effective and influential personal brands for a variety of reasons. And I would consider everyone in Julie's collection of people to be highly accomplished. And you are all impact-driven entrepreneurs because of the training that you've taken. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat box, which of these actually apply to you. So one of the reasons that people have difficulty creating effective personal brands is because we tend to be too perfectionist. To reach a level of excellence, there has to have been perfectionism in your past and probably in your present day that got you honing your skills, being disciplined to be amazing. And when it comes to learning a new skill, like personal branding, creating content, talking to the black hole, our perfectionism can get so in the way that it stops us from actually putting ourselves out there. So if perfectionism has been holding you back from building a personal brand or building your business, throw a 1 into the chat box. Excellent. Thanks for your honesty. The next thing that tends to hold people up from building effective personal brands is having too much talent. You have years of experience, whether it is in your original training or if it is in the endeavor that you're in right now. When you have so much experience, it's hard to leave some of that experience on the table. And so when you're building a personal brand, oftentimes we're like, oh, I got to show all the bits. And all that does is confuse your market. What we need to do is show the bits that they need to know in order to walk through the door and become our client. So how many of you have been guilty of trying to show off all your talents in the world on your LinkedIn profile or any other kind of marketing that you've been doing? Thank you, Sterling, for weighing in on that one, and Austin. Next is being too complex. Now, when we come from industry or we come from a training program, oftentimes what happens is we want to use the jargon. And we want to explain things at a really high level because that makes us feel excellent. That's that perfectionism kicking in again. But what happens is the people that we're typically trying to help are not at that same level as us. And I'm not saying intellectually at the same level, I'm saying at the same level in their journey, maybe in their experience. And so when we're trying to put content out there, or even marketing, oftentimes we get caught up in using our cutesy branding, or we use the jargon that we've learned because it makes us feel really smart. And all it does is go over people's heads and kind of makes them feel dumb, which is not a good way to get a sale. So we have to be very careful with how we are presenting things such that we are meeting people at the same level. And I'm going to give you an example that is pretty easy to understand because you've all been to a dentist. And oftentimes when someone goes to the dentist and they're like, oh, I have bleeding gums, the dentist is like, oh, yes, you have gingivitis and the bacterium in there are causing the inflammation and blah, 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 over people's heads. Now, if someone comes to me and says, I have bleeding gums, back when I was a dentist, I would say, okay, cool, let's do something about the bleeding gums. Yeah, there's some bugs in your mouth that are probably making that bleeding happen. We can take care of that. Very different approach. Taking my doctor hat off and coming down to the level of the client. right? So how many of you have been guilty of being too complex, either in you're talking at a more experienced level than the client that you're working at, or you're using jargon or cutesy branding to try and convey things that aren't hitting the right way? Throw a 3 in the chat box. Yeah, pretty normal. The fourth thing that tends to help stop professionals from creating highly influential personal brands is you never feel like what you know is enough, especially if you have been through a pivot. So if you've come from industry that maybe you got your degree in and you worked in forever, and suddenly you come in and you're like, oh, I'm going to be a coach or consultant, there is often a little voice of doubt. You can call it imposter syndrome, maybe a little gremlin on your shoulder saying, who's going to buy from you? You don't belong in this industry. How dare you advise these people on these things? Right? And so what happens is we start amassing certifications. Go and get our ICF certification. Maybe you go and get a master's. Maybe you go and do the Maxwell Leadership Program, right? We start to try and arm ourselves with things such that we feel like we are enough. How many of you are guilty of feeling like what you know is not enough? Got a few 4s in there. The next thing, which is what we're going to hone in on today, is never fully owning your genius. Now, as Canadians, even as North Americans, we tend to need to play it humble. And so when someone compliments us, we're like, oh, no, my success was because of this, right? And we point to external factors instead of realizing that we know what we know, and we're really good at it. And what that does is plant little seeds of doubt into our clients' minds as to whether we actually do know what we think we know. When we do that, that is not going to build a personal brand that has people going, oh, yeah, that's the person I need to talk to. So being humble is great, but you also need to be confident. You need to be putting your stuff out there as your opinion, and when it's fact, put it out as fact. If you try and hide behind, well, it's kind of this and kind of that, which Canadians were so good at using that kind of terminology where we try to soften it and be politically correct with things, that doesn't help you to build a strong personal brand. So how many of you have been guilty of not fully owning your genius? Excellent. We're going to set you on the path to changing that today. So personal branding is as complex as corporate branding. So when you're looking at your personal brand, you need to think like the brands that you know. Google, Lululemon, any of these brands that, whether you like them or not, they are part of your life. Now, a lot of times people get caught up in really trying to put the perfect brand out there, especially if they are like, okay, I'm going through this pivot. I want to get it right the first time. That's number one coming in. That's perfectionism. Your brand is never going to be perfect, because the minute you get it perfect, something shifts and now you have to evolve, and now it's slightly out of date. So with your personal brand, you need to be willing to let it move. It's a living and breathing thing that moves with you as you evolve. And likely you are going to be constantly adding to your knowledge. Maybe it's through certifications, maybe it's through the experience with your clients, right? Or maybe it's just realizations that you have along the way. But your brand is not static. It is highly dynamic. And the scary thing about that is when you're putting yourself out there on a platform, especially like LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a judgy platform. It is a reputation-based platform. And so nobody wants to make a misstep on there. And what often happens is, because they're so afraid of making that misstep, they never actually put anything out there. Now, who do you think is going to win in the race to get clients? The person who is waiting for the perfect moment to have the perfect piece of content, to have the perfect brand? Or the person who's like, yeah, I guess it's going to have to be good enough. I need to get something out there, and they get seen by the right people. It's going to be the one who's willing to make some missteps, the person who's willing to put themselves out there, even if it's not perfect. So if perfection has been holding you back, I'm going to challenge you in 2025 to really start letting that go. Done is better than perfect. So over my entrepreneurial career, I have built 5 companies and exited 4 of them, and they were all built through personal branding and social media. The first one was a referral-based clinic in Forest Lawn in Calgary. which when I bought the practice, everyone told me you're an idiot because you're in the worst part of town. It's owned by a 78-year-old dentist. You're 28. So there's a 5-decade generation gap between us. It was in terrible repair. It had a bad reputation. And I could only see potential in it. So when I started in there, I really went against everyone else's best practices. So I went and closed it down in 3 months, renovated it from head to toe. Then I took it from being highly insurance-based and having 20-year payment plans to patients having to pay up front. I went and did my master's program in Seattle and got my full mouth rehabilitation. And I was in that class with people who were 20, 30 years my senior. I actually was able to convince the head of the program to start bringing digital dentistry into the program because my final case was fully digitally designed. No one had brought that in as their final case study. And after that, he incorporated digital dentistry into the program. So I was doing things that were not the norm. They were unconventional. And because I wanted to grow the practice fast, I knew that I was the face of the practice. So I started sending out referral pads to other dentists and telling them, you know what, I like dealing with people who are afraid of the dentist. And so I started being sent patients. I decided to go to the University of Southern California and get my IV station so I could serve those patients at a higher level. I started creating radio ads that made fun of how ridiculous it was to be afraid of the dentist. And so our reputation spread far and wide in Calgary and the surrounding area. Now, unfortunately, I got injured out of my dental career. My dental career killed my dental career. And so when that happened, I decided to go back to full-time professional dance and build my own company. Now, I had built the dental clinic during the global financial crisis, and I decided to build the professional dance company during the 2015 oil crisis. So my timing is impeccable. There wasn't a need for another dance company, but I knew I was going to bring in my genius, which was teaching people how to actually leverage their body in a way that allowed them to level up their skill set. The way I grew that company was through Facebook. I started inviting people to events through Facebook, which is not what anyone else was doing. And during an economic crisis, I became the second largest adult-based Latin company in the city in 6 months. Now, a year of that, I was like, well, I invested about $500,000 in my business and dental education aside from dental school. So I decided it was time to start looking at how I could help the industry. And I didn't want to pay anything for advertising. So I decided to use LinkedIn, which again, everyone around me was like, you're an idiot. Nobody is on LinkedIn from the dental industry. And I was like, well, I was on LinkedIn. So I bet you people who are like me are on there. So I started building my personal brand on there. And in a year, I went from 200 to 12,000 dental industry followers. And I got a lot of attention for it because I wasn't just known in Canada. I was known in the US. I was known abroad, even as far as Australia. And I started getting contacted by the heads of dental companies saying, hey, we like the way you think. Do you want to come in and talk to our executive team? Do you want to start coming in and talking to our sales teams? So I started being invited all over the world to go in and talk to them about how they could serve dentists because I had the clinical background. I also had the marketing background. And so they knew they could leverage me to really get into the heads of dentists in those two different ways. Now, because I grew my company so fast through LinkedIn, people started coming to me and saying, hey, I saw what you did and I get how you did that when you were a dentist and you were in Calgary and you were boots on the ground, but I don't get how you did that in a year internationally. Can you do that for me? And I wasn't really sure if I could. So I started dabbling with a few people's profiles. And what happened was I discovered what I had done was not a unicorn. It was completely replicable. And that's where my social media agency came into play. That company, I grew 100% through LinkedIn. And in 10 months during the pandemic, again, I have amazing timing with these things. I went from 2.5 to 14 full-time team members in a 10-month period. So we exploded. Then I decided to burn it all down and start from scratch and created what I do now, which is Unleashing Influence. And what this company does is it helps professionals who want to pivot or who already have pivoted into coaching or consulting to take it from conception to launch and to scale through their personal brand. And these are just the 5 companies that I've built for myself. I've built countless other companies for my clients through these same tactics. So it works across so many different kinds of industries, so many different kinds of personalities. It is cheap because it takes your time. Yes, you'll have to probably take a course like what I offer to be able to learn how to do it well. But once you've got that knowledge, you can keep evolving it as you evolve. So the 3 components of building a personal brand are this. You need to ignite your credibility. So if you're not credible in the marketplace, you're dead in the water. You also need to amplify your visibility because you can be the most talented person in the world, but if no one knows you exist, it doesn't really matter. And you need to also impact ideal paying clients. Oftentimes when I talk to people and I start asking them, how is LinkedIn going? They're like, oh, I'm growing my network. I'm getting all these connections. And then I ask the want kind of question, which is, how many paying clients have you gotten from it? And oftentimes they've been spending years on LinkedIn, putting in all this effort, feeling great about it because they have a network growing, but they've gotten zero reward financially for their effort. And then I have to tell them to give their head a shake because personal branding is not a hobby. Your business is not a hobby. Any effort that you're putting in as an entrepreneur better have a measurable reward. Otherwise, you're wasting a whole bunch of time. So let's take a look at where you rate on this. So what I want you to do is rate yourself out of 10 and give me the justification for why you are rating yourself as such. So first is, are you credible in the market with your current endeavor? I don't care about your past industry experience. I care about with what you're doing right now, are you credible? So I would consider a 10 out of 10 to be people who don't even know you refer you clients. 0 out of 10 means nothing is happening with it. So with the numbers that you're putting in as well, I do want to know why you're giving yourself that number. So I see a couple of 2s. So for Julie, I'm hosting events regularly and it is not enough income yet. Fair. What about the rest of you? Glenn, have made some contacts that have led to discovery calls, but no income. Okay. Hopefully those discovery calls, Glenn, are with ideal clients. If they're not, then I would consider that not a great measure. For Sterling, I'm getting people interested in connecting or following, yet no real connections. Okay. Austin, 7, getting referrals from existing clients, not getting referrals from random people. Cool, but you're on your way. If you're getting referrals from existing clients, that will start to come, especially if you're building out your reputation through content and events. So the next one I want you to measure yourself on is, are you being seen by your ideal audience? And again, I want to know why you're giving yourself that number. So out of 10, 10 out of 10 means yes, when you look at your impressions, everyone who is in your impressions is your ideal. 0 out of 10 means, it's old industry followers that are actually showing up and watching your content. So again, I'd like to see the justification for your number, Sterling. Julie, 0, I don't know how to tell who is seeing my content. Okay, that's fair. Glenn, 2, combination of old industry and new industry, too many coaches in my network. Yeah, and that's one thing as you start to build your audience, you will start to shift who are the top people looking at your content. Oftentimes when I have bankers come to me, they're like, oh yeah, my content is getting so much traction. And we go in and look at who is actually looking at it, and it's their own colleagues, which means 0 business is going to come from what they feel good about with the impressions that they're getting. So the next one is, are you impacting ideal paying clients? So 10 out of 10 means you're getting paid by the people who are seeing your content. 0 out of 10 means you're not getting paid by them. So Sterling is a 0. Glenn is 0. Okay, got a bunch of 0s. Ooh, Austin is a 7. High 5. Good job. So when you are looking at what you're doing with your personal brand, these are the 3 things you want to be checking, right? If you are getting paid and you're being seen by your ideal clients, but you're not credible in the marketplace, that's going to be a very short-lived run. If you're credible in the marketplace and you're being seen by ideal clients, but you're not getting paid by them, again, that's a problem. So when you know that your personal branding tactic is dialed in, you are credible. So you're getting referred by people who don't even know you. You're being seen when you look at the impressions and the makeup of your audience and who's seeing your stuff. It is your ideal people. And you're also starting to get paid by the people who are looking at your content. And you'll find that as you have really good content, people will come onto a call with you and be like, yeah, I reached out because of that article. I reached out because of that video. And they can tell you exactly which video it is. If you're creating a lot of content, sometimes you have to be like, yep, I remember that. And you're like, I don't remember that. But it's good to know that they're actually being impacted by what you're putting out there. Not only does it feel good, but when you're actually getting paid and gaining new clients because of it, then you know it's actually working. So if you're going to build a personal brand, you need to know what makes you clearly different. Now, this week we're running a challenge and Julie's been sitting in it as well. And we've had a lot of people have been rating their answers as blending in versus standing out. And when you're first starting to build a brand, you're going to borrow what you're hearing from other people in the marketplace. So it's very normal to be blending in. And then you need to start adjusting it so that you can stand out. But 3 other things that are going to help you stand out and will show that you're clearly different. One of them is experience. So experience is your street cred. It's the number of hours that you've been putting in, the reps that you've got. The second one is your expertise. So that's the certifications that you could put on your wall. And the third one is your passion. So for each of you, which of these are going to help set you apart? Is it your experience? Is it your expertise and or your passion? You put 3 if it's all 3. If it's less than all 3, then throw those in the chat box, please. So Julia's passion. And we all know that she's bursting with passion, so totally agree with you on that one. Sterling is all 3. Glenn, expertise and passion, probably mostly passion. Yeah, and passion is a big deal. Especially in the professional world, what happens is we've been told we need to be professional. And so we tend to temper down our passion because we don't want to appear as unprofessional. But the thing is, if you have the experience and the expertise similar to someone else, but you don't have the passion, the person who does have the passion is likely to win the game. Because when someone is passionate about it, we tend to assume that they are going to do a better job. They're more invested in what they're doing. So being able to let your guard down, not have that facade of professionalism out there, but actually showing who we are and what we think and how we feel, which feeling, again, for professionals is a challenge, that's what's going to allow you to stand out, okay? Now, a lot of what building a personal brand is burning things away. And my nickname is the Arsonist. And I'm going to be asking you to channel your inner arsonist for the rest of this session. So thinking about like, what am I doing that isn't actually working, that isn't actually serving me? And this came from a question that I was asked on a Saturday morning in bed with a boyfriend after a long entrepreneurial week. I was running 3 companies at that time, working 100 hours per week and loving it. And when he asked me this question, Ange, what does your dream life look like? I was pretty ticked about it because he wasn't asking it because he was concerned about me. He was concerned about him. But I decided to play along, and that changed my life. The answer that came out of my mouth was this. You know, I want to wake up in the tropics, feeling the humidity on my skin, smelling fragrant flowers in the air, and seeing palm trees outside my window. I want to get up at sunrise, ride a motorcycle to the beach, and surf. And then come back and work for a couple of hours with my ideal paying clients who are creating massive impact in the world. And then be done with it. Be able to enjoy my day, spend sunset on the beach having dinner with good friends. And then by the time I get into bed, I want to know that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do. Now, if you had known me back then, you would have known that this is a complete 180 from how I was living my life. I was working, again, 100-hour work weeks, running 3 businesses. I felt like I was a badass. Everyone else thought I was as well, because I was doing things that weren't supposed to be possible in my businesses. And I loved being a martyr for my business. Now, that question that he asked me, even though he came and went, that question drilled into my brain. And it set me on a path of starting to see things differently in my world. I started to see people having success in a completely different way than I was raised to have in university. Climbing the corporate ladder, sacrificing myself for the achievement that they had, that little carrot that they had set out for us to chase. I started seeing people have more balance in their life, enjoying life, not being a martyr to their business. And I started to wonder if I could have that as well. So that question that he asked me about a year later had set into full motion a series of events, including me selling one of my businesses, selling everything I owned, selling my house, buying a one-way ticket to Nicaragua, and the next morning, waking up, feeling the humidity on my skin, smelling fragrant flowers in the air, and seeing palm trees outside my window. I made that vision a reality. And how I did that was I took radical responsibility. Me being a martyr to my business, working 100-hour work weeks, working 3 businesses, having a ton of employees, was a sum of my choices. And if I wanted a different life, I had to make different choices, and those would accumulate to a different life. And so it was. Now, 3 months into living on the beach, riding a motorcycle at sunrise, starting to enjoy life a little bit, it didn't take long for me to find myself. And I don't mean my new self. I meant my old self. Suddenly, I was back to working 100-hour work weeks. I was back to being stressed out of my mind. And I was hot and uncomfortable in a new country. And I realized I was drowning in my own ambition. Yeah, I had made a bold move, burning down my life, moving across multiple countries, but I was still the same person. I hadn't changed anything except my geographic location. I realized I was so good at burning things down, but I was also so good at building things back up. And so I took a step back. I was like, you know what? I didn't burn down my life to come back and build the same life in a new country. I wanted to do things differently. So I sat back and was like, what do I actually want? And really, this is what I wanted. I want to have one company. I wanted to have one offer, and I wanted to take it to $1 million. That was it. Simple. Just focus on one thing instead of being spread in so many different directions. And when I looked at my companies, I was like, well, I don't know what to even do here. So I had this weird inspiration to start figuring out what people will pay me for. And I always have sticky notes on my desk. And I had these fluorescent yellow ones and fluorescent pink ones. And I had a beautiful whiteboard that was 2 feet by 3 feet. And so I started writing a single skill on each piece of paper and sticking them on the whiteboard. Now, you've seen my history. I've got a lot of skills just like you guys do, and I have skills across disparate industries. So by the time I was done writing this out, my whiteboard was full. And I'm staring at it going, well, this isn't helpful. So I went for a run and I came back, went to bed, and the next morning, my whiteboard was staring me down with this fluorescent chaos. And I figured, you know, there had to be a reason I had this inspiration. So I started ordering the chaos into category of most loved skilled and most hated skills. And then I took the most loved skills and ordered them from most loved to least loved. And what came out in the wash were my top 3 skills. That I'm amazing at igniting people's credibility. Someone can tell me their story and I can go, here's what your position is in the marketplace. I'm amazing at amplifying visibility. So someone wants to get known for what they want to do, I can show you the pathway to do that. And I'm amazing at getting people paid for their skills, no matter what the skill is. So these 3 skills became my guiding light. They made up my niche of genius. And what I actually did was took all the sticky notes down, threw them out, and then I put yes on my whiteboard, and then those 3 skills were all I was allowed to say yes to, and I got really serious about what I wanted to do. I sold off my remaining 2 companies on just those 3 skills. So really what that was me starting another bonfire. I was really good at, again, burning things down. But my resolution this time was that I was not going to build more things in its place. I was going to keep it simple. I was going to keep it effective, and I was going to get really predictable with what I was doing. Now, what I would love to know is, what are the top 3 skills you would love to do on a daily basis? And if you could commit to just those 3 skills for the next 5 years as your leading skills in the marketplace, what would you do that would make you so happy? Throw that in the chat box. For Glenn, coach and make people happy, or make people laugh. So we got 2. Do you have a third one? Not yet. Okay. Well, two is even more concise than 3, so work with that. What about the rest of you? For Julie, host 2 personal growth and leadership development events for business professionals per year and coach others how to be successful doing it. Cool. So you got 2 top skills as well. We have a theme emerging here. Leona, connecting people, communication, and building community. Beautiful. I'll tell you, whatever 3 skills you pick, you can be successful with them, right? I have been to conferences for scaling from 7 to 8 figures, and it is insane to me what some people make their first $1 million doing. You guys are using skills that are highly impactful. You're not doing basket weaving. So if you hunker down and get focused and get intentional with what you're trying to build, you can build it on whatever you want. So there's no wrong answer to the top 3 skills. And you may actually want to go home and do the little sticky note exercise, because it will be interesting to see what comes out in the wash when you lay out absolutely everything. Something might actually surprise you, but it's good. We've got a good start to this. So once you know what those 3 skills are, what I suggest you do is start a bonfire. Now, you don't have to be an arsonist like me and be like, well, once I see it, I can't unsee it. I need to take massive action on it. You can light little matches, right? And you can start burning away little things that don't belong in your life anymore, and start getting yourself slowly narrowed into your niche of genius so that you are in your most impactful skills in the market and putting yourself forth as that. What we know right now is people are not looking for Jack or Jill of all trades. They want a specialist. People are looking to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And if you come across as a Jack or Jill of all trades, what happens is they're thinking it's not going to be a straight linear path. You're going to take them on one path with all of these options in it. So that's not how we want to come across with our personal brand. We want to come across as narrowed and focused and knowing what we know. So we left off with me having burned down my companies, and it was about 3 months of getting a little bit of traction with the new company. And I was honestly a little bit scared. It actually takes a lot to get me scared, but I was starting to be like, oh my gosh, did I just burn all my income off? And have I shot myself in the foot? And now I'm never going to get successful again. But by the end of the 3 months, a client decided to pay me in full upfront for my services. And what she paid me was more than I would have made in a whole month working full-time as a dentist. So that was that boulder that started to roll. And I was like, okay, cool. We know this is going to work because we got that first big payment, and the boulder will start rolling quite easily. And it did. This is what happened with all my companies. Once that first big payment comes in, everything takes off like a shot. And I realized if this took off as fast as I could see it taking off, I was going to be back to drowning in my own ambition. I was going to be back to working 100-hour work weeks, and old Angela was going to find me. So I decided to take a step back. I decided to look at the clients that I was working with, and the clientele that I work with is really high caliber, especially at the beginning there. I've created different programs now, but who I was focusing on was like one of my clients is former CIO of NASA. So 40-year tech career, famous in the industry, an amazing amount of experience and genius. And I had a whole bunch of these. And when I looked at what was happening during my week was I was telling the same thing to different people at different hours, but it was the same information. I was also noticing that those kind of people pivoting from those high-powered roles into becoming an entrepreneur had their circle really doubting their sanity. They had left comfortable positions, profitable positions where they were famous in their industries and taking a risk on themselves. And their friends and family were questioning why they were actually doing that. What I also found was that things that we were talking about in those individual sessions was stuff that I was like, oh, I wish that she could have heard that, or I wish that he could have heard what you just said. There was so much genius in the group that I was working with. And so I decided to have a frank conversation with each of them and tell them that how I was working with them wasn't working for me. And we had pretty vulnerable relationships. So they were okay with me telling them the truth. And I told them, if this crazy idea that I have to bring you guys together doesn't work, we'll just go back to the way things were. So I decided to get these people in the same room and start them on a curriculum, a 90-day curriculum where we had a goal of what we were going to achieve. And each week we were working together on each of their companies and hitting these different milestones. And what came out in the wash was pretty amazing. About 2 years worth of work was accomplished in those 90 days because we weren't having people come in with something going wrong in their business or in their personal life, and suddenly the plan for the day was now in a completely different direction. They came and subscribed to the curriculum, they came in focused. And it allowed me to leverage my niche of genius. It allowed me to create impact in a faster way. And again, it was unconventional. At that time, group coaching wasn't really a thing that people were willing to do. Group coaching was like the downsell. And this was my highest cost program. It was $35,000 for a seat, and I worked with maximum six at a time, right? So this was my upsell, which is unconventional. The cool part about it was not only did we increase the rate of accomplishment for them, my hourly rate, the first round, 6 times what I was making individually coaching, and now it's 17 times what I was originally making. And that's in a matter of a few years. It allowed me to create that simple company that was effective, that created predictable outcomes, and now it's become super agile so that it can evolve quickly, especially with AI coming in now. And this is what I help people to build as well. So the kind of company that you want, it's really important to figure out who you actually want to be working with. And I'm not saying taking everyone that could possibly be a fit. It's figuring out who your ideal client is, who you would actually love to see on your schedule on a daily basis. So in the chat box, I'd love to see who does your niche of genius, those top 3 skills encompassed together, who will they ideally serve, regardless of whether that's who you're serving now or not. Throw that in the chat box, please. So, Leona, if you took those top 3 skills and you were to try and figure out who would be the best person for you to work with that you would be delighted to work with on a daily basis, what do you know about them? Are they from a certain kind of industry? Are they a certain attitude? Do they have a certain professional background? What do you know about them? So for Julie, business professionals who want to grow themselves, their business, or their community. Great. That's very specific.
I could actually say one for Leona that I think she does.
Yeah,
She likes working with first-time homeowners who are new to the community.
beautiful. That is very niched. What about the rest of you? And if you don't know, just throw "I don't know" in the chat box. Glenn, professionals who want to grow in their leadership abilities, growing while they help grow those around them. Cool. So when you guys are listing professionals, is there a subcategory of that that you're going after as well? And sometimes it's professionals with this kind of attitude, right? For me, I work with professionals who have 20 plus years of experience, who are pivoting out of corporate or who have already pivoted and aren't successful and have massive skills to create impact in the world. That's pretty specific, right? So the more you get niche down into this and get granular with who you're going after, the easier it is to actually build your personal brand, because then you know who you're targeting. If you think your target is everybody, you're going to have a hard time trying to build your audience and figure out what messaging is working with the right kind of people. So it can be industry specific, or it could be client specific. So for some people, say I'm going to take the former CIO of NASA. So she exited the tech industry. So she was going after people in the tech industry because she could talk the jargon. She knew what the culture in the industry was like. She knew people who could get her into the Fortune 500 companies, and I helped make those introductions as well. And then she also knew the kind of clients that she wanted to work with. They were mid-career who were trying to build innovation, and they were of female gender, right? So again, if you can get granular, it's easy to start finding and pinpointing those people on LinkedIn who you want to have in your audience. So it's great to know who you want to serve and how you can serve them. But let's be honest, building a business is hard. And it's as easy / as hard to build a business that you love as a business that you resent. So if you are building this business, either what's in it for you that you know right now, or what is in it for you that you want to have by actually building this business, by serving the kind of clients that you want to serve. For some people, it could be, it's providing me an income. It provides me the lifestyle that I want. For some people, it's fulfilling their full potential. For me, it's taking my serial entrepreneur brain, which would allow me to build 100 companies, and putting that into other people's companies so that I'm not working 100-hour work weeks. That's what's in it for me by doing the work that I do. So I want to hear in the chat box, what is in it for you by serving your ideal clients? For Glenn, it's income, control over schedule, celebrating their wins. Nice. Leona, a sense of value in helping others navigate a stressful process of buying home and income. For Julie, money and community of people who want to be connected and growing personally and professionally. Yeah. And I would suggest you take some time today and actually get really deep into what you want out of your company. Because if you know how you want it to end up, then you can be intentional about doing that. If you're just like, oh, I just want to make this much money, I just want to serve this many clients, that's not going to help you to build it with intention. It will help you to grow. But by the time you're done growing it, you may have a beast that you hate. And that's the worst kind of business that you can grow. And you could have, instead of putting all that effort into something that you hate, you could have built something that you loved. So why not get intentional about it right now? So ish what your top 3 skills are. What do you think you're actually a genius at? Throw that in the chat box. Glenn, simplifying next steps. Ooh, that is a beautiful skill to have in this day and age. Leona, making people feel comfortable and valued. That's a nice analog skill that is going to come in very handy as AI takes over a lot of things. For Sterling, discerning needs. Nice. What about the rest of you? Julie, putting together a good simulcast event. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of events out there. So having one that stands out and is actually valuable is useful, and you can build a reputation based on that. Now, oftentimes when I ask someone their genius, they're like, we get into that humble mode, very Canadian, of being like, well, but I'm not really a genius. So when you think about these things, do you get a little bleh in your tummy? And where is that coming from? Now, our doubts often have come from our past, right? Sometimes it's cultural, right? Your culture may say in your gender role or in your, even in your class, you're not supposed to be getting to a certain level. And that can make us self-sabotage, not make the income that we want, not make the impact that we want, not acquire the skills that we need to be able to get to the level that we want. Religion can do the same thing. Sometimes it's familial. You know, in my family, it's very blue collar. So for me to become a doctor, that was a big no-no. That wasn't a yay, we're leveling up. It was actually super frowned upon and something that I dealt with for a long time. Sometimes it's traumatic as well, right? Like when I lost my dental career, I ended up living out of my car for a little while. Like I had built this amazing thing and the bottom fell out of no fault of my own. So that influenced a lot of how hard I pushed. That was where the 100-hour work weeks came from, was extreme fear of losing it all. So with your doubts about your genius, or even about your potential success in your business, where is that coming from? Throw that in the chat box. And the reason I want you identifying this is once you identify it, you can start getting rid of that story that you've been told, that you've bought into, and start creating a new story for yourself. So for Julie, it's family and trauma. What about the rest of you? Leona, family and trauma too? Yeah. If something goes awry with your content, with someone trolling you on LinkedIn or saying unnice things, whether it's public or behind the scenes in private messages, these doubts are going to come up and they can be enough to completely knock you off your track and make you not want to put yourself out there anymore. So when you can understand where they come from, it allows you to be more resilient, because if you're building a personal brand, especially on LinkedIn, you have to have rhinoceros skin. You have to be willing to take the good with the bad. And very likely you're going to have way more good than bad. But when you're putting your heart and soul into your brand, you're putting your heart and soul into building the company that you want to build. When someone says something unkind or downright nasty, it'll probably make you cry. And it'll make you doubt whether you want to do it. I've had this happen, and I've been doing this for a long time. And I still have the odd time where someone writes something or posts something, and I'm like, why am I even doing this? You know, is it even worth it? Even though I've put in all this effort. And I've been like, I have the history to be anchored in this. If you're newly doing it and you get something like that happen, it's so easy to be like, I'm out, which is not what I want for you. So what I would like you to do right now is close your eyes. And if you think this is hokey, I'm okay with that. I'm going to get you to play along anyway, because I can see you guys on the video. So sit comfortably in your chair. Take a nice deep breath in and close your eyes. And I want you to let go of where you're at today. Any of the stresses that you have, let them go. I want you to take the lessons from what you've lived so far and use them to inform what you want to build into the future. So knowing what you know right now, if you could rebuild your life at the point you're in right now, what would that look like? Where would you be living geographically? What kind of home would you be living in? What kind of bedroom and bed would you be waking up in? Now, this is the start of your day. You've just woken up. You're rustling around in the sheets. What do the sheets feel like on your skin? What does the room smell like? As you slide your feet out over the side of the bed and onto the floor, what does that floor feel like? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it hard or soft? Now you've built your ideal day and you're getting to live it right now. So you're allowing yourself to be set up for success from the get-go. So in your ideal world, in your dream life, what would you be doing in the morning to set yourself up for an impeccable day? Would you be taking time to go for a walk? Maybe taking time to reflect and journal? Maybe you'd be meditating, getting exercise, hanging out with your friends, your family, or your critters. But just think about what you would do to give yourself that best opportunity at a great day. Now, as you proceed into your day and you're heading into your workday, where are you working? Are you working at a brick and mortar business? Are you working from home? Are you working online? Who are you working with? Are you working with a team? Are you leveraging automation and artificial intelligence instead of a team? Or maybe you're just doing it all yourself. What kind of clients are you working with in your dream life? Those kind of clients that you are so excited to see on your schedule because they give you so much juice. You're so inspired by them to do a better job and create more impact for more people. Now, as your workday wraps up, you happen to open your phone and glance at your bank account. In your dream life, how much money do you have in your bank account? And as you move into the rest of your day, because you're working so efficiently, you have a whole afternoon and evening to enjoy your life. So what are you doing with that time? Are you taking time for self-care? Are you enjoying your friends and family? And as your day wraps up and you crawl back into your dream bed, in your dream room, in your dream house, in your dream location, what is the last thought that crosses your mind before you drift off into a deep, deep slumber? Now, I'd like you to put your hand on your chest and keep your eyes closed and just feel whatever feeling you have right now. And just take a nice deep breath in and breathe out. Take a nice deep breath in again. And on your breath out, double that feeling. On your next breath out, double it again. And on your last breath out, double it one more time. And I'd like you to open your eyes, come back into the room, and just throw in the chat box, what is that feeling that you experienced in that visualization? The top word that you would use to describe it. Peace, peace. What about the rest of you? Peace and rest, like that. How close is your current life to those? So 10 out of 10 means you are feeling that peace, that rest, or that fulfillment, whatever your word was. 0 out of 10 means you're absolutely not. And this is throughout your day, not just little peeks or glimpses into this. How much of your day is actually in this? We've got everything from a 4, 2, and 8. This is what I want you to have as your guiding light as you're building your business. If you're building a business where you're into that anxiety, or you're into that martyrdom, or you're into the giving the pound of flesh, take a step back and go, is this what I actually want to build? Does that align with that vision, that feeling in that vision that I have for my life? And if it doesn't, start lighting some matches and getting rid of the things that are causing that anxiety or that martyrdom. So if you were to think about it, with where you're at right now versus where you want to go, what has to evolve to realize this dream life? In other words, what do you have to burn away to realize it? So are there things you have to add, or are there things you have to subtract? Throw it in the chat box. So for Sterling, we need to add clients to work with. Absolutely. Is there anything that you're doing that is holding you back from actually doing that? For Leona, I have to add connections, clients, and collaborators. Sterling, so we have to subtract you. Is that what you're saying? For Glenn, health and consistency. And it's funny, the health thing, a lot of entrepreneurs really sacrifice their health because they're like, well, I'll be able to exercise when I get this built. I'll be able to exercise when I get the right clients. And if you start sacrificing that to get to where you want to go, you may never be able to do the kind of work that you want to do if your health starts kicking out. And especially as we get older, most of my clients are 55 plus. When they've made the sacrifice of health, it makes a massive difference in how they can bring the energy and vigor to the work that they want to do to create that impact. For Julie, I need to add more knowledge to get to the right kind of clients, need to still burn away some stuff I'm doing or maybe working with. Absolutely. So the fact is, you can have the dream life that you want. You can have anything that you want. Look at my life. I was a 100-hour-a-week addicted entrepreneur to now I work 5 hours a week client facing. That's it, max. But I didn't get there by accident, right? I've done things where I've leaned into my niche of genius. I have created impact, and I've done things that were a little bit unconventional in the way that I've approached it. And this is what I encourage you to start doing as well. And you can do it across different industries. These companies are not all that interrelated. They're in disparate industries, and there's different social media approaches that were used, and they all had me as the personal brand creating these companies. So you can do it too. When you get into your personal branding, again, you want to measure it by these three things. Are you igniting your credibility? Are you amplifying your visibility? And are you impacting those ideal paying clients? If you're missing one of these, maybe we should have a chat. Or you go back to the drawing board and try and figure it out yourself. But we talked about this yesterday in the challenge. You can be an owl who's like laser focused on what they're doing, or you can be a butterfly trying to figure out how things are going to work and waste a whole bunch of time not getting to where you want to go. Your niche of genius is important. It's the basis of your personal brand. You got to figure out what that is. Leverage it to create the impact in the world that you want. And again, slightly do it unconventionally. You don't have to be way out there. You can just be slightly different in order to set yourself apart, because the coaching and consulting industry is jam-packed with people who already sound like what you're doing. So how are you going to differentiate yourself to pull ahead of the crowd? To be able to change your life, though, you got to take radical responsibility. Where you're at today is the sum of your choices. No one made you do anything that you've done. So if you want to start pivoting, even if it's a slight pivot, you just have to make slightly different choices, and over a bit of time, those will accumulate into a different life that you want. I encourage you to start measuring things in this way. Your business is simple, including your personal brand. It's effective, it creates predictable outcomes, and it allows you to evolve quickly. So you want to be able to make those little pivots as you go as quickly as possible, because our world is changing very, very quickly. This next year is going to shock you if you're not paying attention to what's happening in the marketplace. And by the end of this, what I really want is for you to be able to do the work that you love with clients that you love, earn more, work less, unleash that massive influence in the world that you desire, and have that geographic freedom if you choose. This has been your LinkedIn Level Up session. I would love to open the floor for like 5 minutes of Q&A, and then I have to hop off because I'm speaking at another event. So I'm just going to stop the share. Julie, I'll let you moderate from here.
Sure. So one of the things I was just going to ask on behalf of some of the people here, like Leona and Austin are both involved in an industry where like they're financial professionals, right? So Leona's a mortgage broker, and that mortgage brokerage has their own brand. So how would you suggest they could differentiate themselves in the market, especially when there are at least 3 other people in the city under the same brand?
Yeah, so when you're in a regulated market, Dutch3 was highly regulated. Financial is always highly regulated. Oftentimes you have to kind of fact check, for lack of a better word, with your head company to make sure that what you're putting out there is approved by them. Because if you're under their umbrella, they consider you to be representing them. Even if it's your personal brand, that personal brand is still under the corporate umbrella. So you got to stay within the rules. Like they're ask what the box is and color within the lines, but get as close to the lines as you possibly can. Push the boundaries and don't do what everyone else is doing. What often I see with financial professionals, and I've like worked with people from all different banks as well, and they're really regulated, especially like RBC. They're like, well, I'm just going to put out what RBC has, and so they just recycle other content because then they're like, well, then I don't have to worry about getting in trouble for anything. And that is one way to go. It's hard to differentiate yourself with that, but if you're putting stuff up from your company, you can still weigh in on it. So with your post, you can be putting your opinion, highlighting the things that really ring true for you and your clients. And then they're going to start seeing that you're actually thinking for yourself. When I say them, I'm talking about your audience. They want to see that you aren't like everybody else. So if you have an opinion on the piece that is being presented, even if it's from corporate, that will start to allow you to differentiate yourself.
Cool. That's great. Any other questions? Silence.
Everyone's so shy. Awesome. Well, if that's it, I will pop out and get ready for my next event.
Okay. And I will thank you so much for sharing. I think we all learned a lot. I learned a lot every time that I hear you, and I can't wait to learn more. And if people want to learn more, they can connect with me and I can hook you up with Angela and you can find out more about. She offers a 3-day challenge workshop, which is an hour and a half each day for 3 days. Probably the beginning of February will be your next challenge.
Yeah,
And
the 4th to the 6th.
And it is an incredible amount of great content that you get. And I can, I'll send you guys all the information about how you can sign up for that. And I want to thank you for spending your time with us today.
My absolute pleasure. Nice to see you, Julie, and everyone else that I've seen before. And we'll see you guys again soon. Bye for now.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.